We've been looking at the book of James in the New Testament. James is one of those writers, one of the people that we learn so much from. James would have grew up in the same household as Jesus, as he would be a half-brother to our Lord Jesus Christ. He was one of the leaders in the church in Jerusalem. And we get a neat little book. Towards the end of the Bible is where it is placed. It's just a neat little book that gives a lot of principles of life on basically how to live a life of faith, how to put those things, because I have faith in God, how to put that into practice within life. So basically how to have better relationships with God, with others, and how to help our faith to grow stronger is what he writes about. This series we've been looking at, we've called Life Hacks. And life hacks are one of those big things. If you go, especially YouTube is where I go to look at a lot of those life hacks, especially for this sermon series. There's basically new ways to do just about anything. Like I said, we used to just call it Yankee know-how. If there's a better way to do something, we want to find out how to do it to make life easier. But life hacks are those things too. That, how to use pool noodles. We looked at a lot of those, all sorts of things you can use them for. Coffee filters for cleaning windows and mirrors, just things like that. All sorts of neat things. And so they will, in any area you want to look, you can find life hacks, how to do something easier, better than the old way that something was done. So some of those things have to do with cleaning. Use onions to clean your grill. Okay, that's pretty cool. Cook them and eat them afterwards, I guess, too. We see, if you're trying to start a fire, Doritos. Okay, have you ever thought about using Doritos? At least use them for something. Doritos, if they're dry, of course, you can use them. Toothpaste can soothe bug bites. And there's just all sorts of these nice little things. So often things that we have around us that we can use for different things to make life better and easier. And so life hacks are kind of fun. It's fun to look at YouTube at a lot of them. Some of them you go, yeah. But some of them are pretty neat. It's kind of fun to look at them. But that's really not our focus. Our focus is looking at life principles in the book of James, and then where the life hack comes in is how can we take some things to make those principles easier to have within our lives. Sometimes easier ways to remember, easier ways to put those life principles into practice to help our faith to grow, our relationships with other people to grow and to be better. And so this morning we're going to look at another area in the book of James that James talks to us about. And it's quite a few places in the book of James he talks about this, and that's our tongue, okay? Our tongue. And Danny set the stage real well for what we're going to be looking at with the meditation this morning. So much speech and words and tongue. Okay, so how many here have tongues, okay? Let's all see them for a minute. Okay, everybody, okay. We all have one of those. Now, it's not so much the tongue is the big deal. It's not taste buds we're not talking about, okay? Can I taste those Doritos or not? But it's the aspect of speech. And as James tells us about the tongue, even though it is such a small member of the body, boy, it can do big things, okay? It can bring life, or it can destroy, right? It can lift people up. It can tear people down with the words, with the speech that we have. We can speak the truth in love, or we can spread lies with evil intent. Okay? Speech, words, using that tongue. It can be used in so many different words, in so many different ways. See, words are powerful because they shape, they direct not only our own lives, but also the lives of others. See, our words can shape and change things. In fact, even a few words can change, a lot of times, the whole world. And so they're very important. Such a small member of the body, but such big things can be done by it. So James makes it quite clear that words are powerful, he tells us, that they shape, they direct lives. And he starts by giving us two images to just help us to picture this whole aspect. And he talks about like the bit in a horse's mouth to guide them, and also the rudder on a boat. And in chapter 3, just verses 3 and 4, this is what he writes. When you put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or make ships as an example. Although they are large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants them to go. So that first thing is he talks about a horse's bit, okay? Just that bit. As we see the bit within the bridle, and then with the reins you can just guide that horse so often wherever you want him to go. An animal that weighs 1,000, 2,000, sometimes even more than that pounds, by just that little bit, what it can do. Or like the rudder of a ship. That he says that it can guide, even with strong winds. You can take a massive boat or a ship, and in comparison to the vessel, it is very small. The aircraft carrier, the USS Roosevelt, which is the USS Teddy Roosevelt, named after him, it's a massive, massive ship. But it's interesting when you think of the rudders on it. There's two rudders, and they each weigh about 50 tons apiece. And so you say, something small? Okay, it's small in comparison to the ship, okay? Even though they are about 29 feet by 22 feet, when you think about how big that aircraft carrier is, the rudder's pretty small. That basically the aircraft carrier is over 1,000 feet long. Okay, that basically its height is about 20 stories tall. Okay, a lot of it's under the water, but about 20 stories tall. The flight deck just itself is about 4.5 acres. And so it seems like 50 tons is pretty big until you start thinking about how massive this ship is. And so something very small in comparison can guide and direct it, all that tonnage, but even through rough seas to wherever they want it to go. So James is telling us only a few words can change the direction of our lives. When you think about it, when you give words of encouragement, let's think to kids. If you give a few words of encouragement to kids, it can change their course to success. If we give a few critical words, it may keep them down by only a few words. It means so much. It shapes our lives. See, we probably all have had times that critical words have come to us, right? And then it may have closed doors for us. It may have changed the course that we went. It may have kept us down because of those critical words. It may still be a part of our lives no matter how many years it has been. But see, my hope is for us to give words of encouragement, okay, which means to put courage into, okay? We're putting courage into people to help fuel hopes and dreams. Words can do that. Because see, even we see that within history. Sometimes a few words, how they are listened to, and then it starts shaping so many different things. We think back to President Kennedy, his words, "We choose to go to the moon." Those words made a difference, didn't they? Okay, those words, and then because they were put into action, we see that it sparked a whole generation, and basically now it's past that generation as well. As we think of moon landings, we think of space shuttles, we think of probes to Mars and exploration of space. We choose to go to the moon. Look at what it did. Our President Reagan said, "Tear down this wall." okay? As we think the effect that the wall got tore down, but also Germany came together. Not two countries anymore, but one country. And then so much of the Eastern Bloc of Europe, how it changed and how freedom came. And the emphasis starting with just 4 words. And then how that was put into practice. Martin Luther King Jr., his words, I have a dream. How long ago that was said, but still we know. Typically when we hear, I have a dream, we know. Okay, we know about that speech. We know about that man. And we see how that, as words and actions continue to be put to that, it's helped so many people to strive as he wanted people to strive, not to look at people by the color of their skin, but the content of character. 4 little words. So see, when we think about critical words, what can they do? Sometimes 4 little words. Or words of encouragement, words that help people to dream or see a bigger picture. We see even in history, and that list goes on and on and on. But we think of how powerful words are. When we think of when God created, not just this earth, this universe, he didn't use his hands, right? He spoke. He spoke. He said, let there be light. And there was light. He said, let the waters teem with living creatures and let birds fly in the sky. And there's fish in the water and there's birds still in the sky from words. God said, let us make man in our own image. We see that God spoke the world and history into place. And our words continue to shape history and to shape this world. See, our words are powerful enough. We can create life and we can destroy life. And this is what James is trying to help us to see. Be very careful with our words. So we see the bit, we see the rudder. He uses another illustration, and that is fire. Fire. In the last part of verse 5 and verse 6 of James 3 says, consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and itself is set on fire by hell. Pretty powerful. As we think, we need to be very careful because it's like fires. You can start a fire, but once it is started, there is no aspect that you can guarantee that it can be contained and controlled, right? You can't guarantee it. We think of, seems like every year, especially out in the West and in California, some of the big fires. Sometimes it's a spark from a campfire, okay? It might be an electrical line that goes down. It might be just a piece of glass alongside the highway with the sun just shining through it that starts a fire. And we see what happens that is not easily controlled and contained. Sometimes taking acres and acres, sometimes even towns out because of what takes place. Back when I was a kid, my brother Marshall and I, one of our tasks for the day it was a Saturday, was to go burn the trash. Okay, everybody had the trash barrels. You took your trash, and so it was our job to go burn the trash. And so we did that. We took the trash to the burn barrel, but also we got some sticks and started lighting them on fire from the burn barrel. And then our adventure kind of went away from the burn barrel, and we went back in the pasture because there we had a fort. And at least where we lived, everybody that had acreage, you had a dump on your place too, where you dumped all your cans and the old vehicles, your old stoves, everything there. So we had a fort back there, and we had our little sticks that were on fire, and we took them back to our little fort back in the dump there. And we just kept playing and doing stuff, and eventually the whole pasture was on fire, okay? Basically, everything seemed to be controlled. But that little fire, it got out of hand. And so it got so far out of hand, we finally had to break down and we got to go to the house to get help, and that's a pretty big deal. We'll let acres burn down before that'll happen. But we went to the house. We had to stay at the house for some reason and go to bed. Is what happened. And my parents, my two older brothers went, and they got the pasture out. It didn't get to the neighbors. It really didn't destroy anything. But yet, it's one of those things. It was really a controlled burn is where it started. But then some other factors got into it, 2 boys. And then it got to where it was pretty hard to control. We could not control it. And so this is the whole idea that James is saying, the way words are. See, once a word is said out loud, we can't take it back, right? It's always there. We can't take it back. We can try to minimize its impact, okay? We can try to give fuller context. We can try to explain it. But once it is spoken, we cannot control it. It cannot be contained. And now, as Danny pulled his phone out earlier, we need to go back there. Social media, if James just had it at the time, okay, he would have the best context there is. Because what social media helps us to see is that magnified. How words, once they're out there, boy, they can be magnified. We don't have to be President Kennedy anymore to have the whole world to see or to hear what we say, because we're all connected, right? It doesn't take someone famous. It just takes anybody saying something and whatever somebody else wants to use it for, out of context, whatever. It is kind of like social media puts a blowhorn on it. Sometimes for good, right? But a lot of times for bad. And so we have to see that. And it's kind of amazing to me sometimes what people, they have on social media. There was a young lady when I was preaching at Macon, Missouri. The church, we had also a Christian school that was a part of the church. And one of the teachers there, on her website at the time, it really wasn't a website because that was pre that. But she would have all sorts of things talking about her kids. Is this smart? I'm a teacher in kind of a smaller town, writing about kids and, not the best things about the kids within her classes. And so she had quite a following. She didn't know it, but a lot of people just loved to read the things she said until eventually she lost her job, okay? It's what happened. That's basically, when you're putting it out there for everyone to see in a small town, they know who you are and they can figure out who the kid was, okay? Is that really the smartest thing to do? People do that with jobs all the time. I hate my boss. I put it out there for the world, and I can't understand why I lost my job, with that. Or what we think is a private message. Once it is sent to somebody, is it private? Not necessarily. It can go any place we want. And so it's just helping us to see, even in a bigger way, what James is saying. Once words are spoken, we have no control anymore. And the social media just helps us to see that in maybe faster and bigger ways than what we've seen it in the past. And so words, once spoken, they're like a fire. We can't necessarily control them once they're spoken. And we can't contain them. It can go and sometimes do a lot of damage, even though that wasn't the intent. May not be the context, but that's the way it goes. And so James wrote also in James 1, verses 19 and 20, he says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." So James is telling us, it sounds like my mom or teachers that I had, you need to listen more and speak less, okay? Isn't that what he's saying? It's good to listen. Listen a lot more. And especially be very careful when we speak when we're angry. The two don't work real well together, speaking when we're angry. And so our life hacks, 3 of them. And I have to say it this way, even though it may make you angry, okay? I have to say it this way because it just don't work with the other two unless we say it this way, is sometimes we need to shut up, okay? Is that all right? Anybody angry? Okay, if you're angry, be still. Okay, that might be a better way. But it won't fit with the other two unless we use shut up, okay? And the kids are gone, and I know that blows what a lot of parents have thought. You don't tell anybody to shut up. But, sometimes we just need to learn that. We need to learn to keep our mouths shut at times, and especially when we're angry, right? Because it is like a fire. It's like a fire. That sometimes, things come out that really we wouldn't want to say later. And sometimes, usually when we're angry, that means our listener is angry as well. And so it probably won't be interpreted real well either. So it's kind of interesting the way God made our body. That tongue that is so powerful is made where it can be locked behind teeth and lips, right? Okay, so he even made locks, okay? As you probably heard growing up, just zip it, okay? That God made us that way. He's trying to help us to see that we can make it where we can't speak. Okay, close our mouths and zip the lips, and sometimes that's really the best, especially when we're frustrated, especially when we're angry. As when I was growing up, it was, heard how many times? Count to 10, okay? Maybe count to 100 sometimes. That sometimes don't let the anger aspect be what guides the words. It usually won't be words that we want, and we can't ever take them back once they come out. But see, that doesn't mean we're always quiet. The Bible tells us not to let the sun go down on our anger, right? There are times that we need to immediately try to correct things, but that doesn't always mean with words, right? We should always seek to restore relationships. We should resolve conflict. But sometimes it's just better for us to be quiet for a while we're angry, and allow God's Spirit to work within us, to work within the situation, to work within everyone that's involved before really anyone speaks. And so that the wisdom maybe can be there through what God wants. So sometimes we just need to shut up. Next is the second life hack is sometimes we need to speak up. Okay? Sometimes we need to speak up. And two very important areas, because words can encourage. So just think about it. Two areas we need to speak up, especially with kids and also with parents. And sometimes, especially if they're quite a bit older. Sometimes we need to speak up because sometimes we only have one chance to speak up. There's situations with kids we may only have one time to encourage. So don't lose it, right? We need to speak up. Use that time to encourage. Use that time to just help them to dream dreams and to know that they're doing right within life. Because maybe you might ignite some passion. You may fuel their future. And so just a lot of times we need to share with kids that give them praise. Okay, to show that we love them, to encourage them to say things within the aspect of faith, to help them within their faith, to cast vision within their life. And as we kind of put a footnote on that, men, we probably need to work harder at doing it. Typically, it seems like women do a better job doing that than we as men do, okay? That so often we see the praise and the nurture coming more from women within life than the aspect of men. Men, we need to do it as well. Not that women should do less, we should do more, right? The aspect of showing that to the men and boys within our lives. So if you're a father or a brother, a grandfather, an uncle, you have male friends, a lot of times we need to say things. And while we have the opportunity, say things that encourage. Say things that will help. Say things that will spur on. And so if you're a father with children, or if you help in taking care of kids in any way, teachers and coaches and different aspects, we need to speak up when we have the chance to work with our kids, to speak words of encouragement when there are things that are truly authentic, and there's always going to be things that we can encourage them in. But also another area is we need to speak up with is dealing with our parents and maybe grandparents. A lot of times we need to say things today because we may not have tomorrow, okay? It's like my daughter-in-law that lives in Columbia, Missouri. Her grandma's 102 years old, okay? And so when somebody's 102, you kind of know they're probably getting on this end of things. But also, they've always been around. And so sometimes you just don't say things. And then a week ago, she fell and broke her hip. And so it kind of brings you to that aspect that, yeah, I probably need to say some words, to be there and encourage. Because while we have the time, and if we have today, if that's still an opportunity for you, is we need to share our love. We need to share that we appreciate certain people and how important that is when we have a chance. And most people are hungry to be affirmed. Okay? We don't outgrow it. Okay? As they say, men are still boys that need to say, you did a good job. Okay? That it's that same aspect. You never outgrow it. So we need to make sure that we are showing those things. We are affirming people because it sometimes can help them to keep the same direction. Sometimes it can help them to change direction as well within life. And so the last thing is we need to do with our words is sometimes we need to clean up what we've messed up. Because see, sometimes our words really mess things up. But we have to be always careful. Like a neighbor we had in Illinois, one of her advice is sometimes you have to be careful what you say because you don't want to stir stink, okay? You don't want to do that. We all can picture that. She maybe didn't say it quite like that, but it's one of those things. We have to be careful. Are you just stirring things to make it worse, or are you really clearing things out to make things better? So maybe we said something in anger. Maybe we were frustrated. Maybe we said something and we regret it. Well, let's use new words and try to clean it up, right? Don't just let it go. We messed up. Acknowledge we messed up. See, Jesus taught and talked a lot about forgiveness. How much we need forgiveness and how much we need to show forgiveness to other people. How important it is. We know we've all said things that we've messed up. So don't just sometimes let it go. Sometimes we need to clean up what we messed up. So this principle, that life principle that James is teaching, it's not hard to figure out, right? It's not hard. It makes sense. We know that about speech. We know that about words. And maybe these little life hacks, sometimes we need to shut up, okay? Sometimes we need to clean up. Sometimes we need to speak up. All are kind of important as we use our words in the way God wants us to use our words. So this morning as the worship team comes up, you know, this life principle just helps us to see how powerful the tongue is. And our words shape history. And sometimes they can change the past though too. Our words can bring life or death, can build up others. They can tear other people down. They can point people to Jesus, and they can diminish our witness, or they can strengthen our witness to others in this world that God has placed us in to make a difference for others. See, our words are powerful. We don't have to be President Kennedy or Reagan or Martin Luther King Jr. to have powerful words. See, once they're spoken, they are out there. We lose control of them then. They are out there. We can't contain them. So that's why sometimes when we're angry, we're frustrated, we just need to be still. Sometimes when we have the chance, we need to speak up because we have the opportunity. And sometimes if we messed up, we need to look at how can I clean up the mess. Clean up the mess that I have made because of my words by using new words that maybe can help a new outcome.